Team, we're going to do something different today. We are not following the crowd. We are not going to be talking about a case that everybody is talking about. I know that's super popular to do. It's what I normally do. It's not like I'm a thought leader in true crime. I am talking about the things that people want to hear, right? That is what I do. But today, something happened in a case that was the very first case that I was assigned to investigate as a brand spanking new investigative reporter at EYT Media here in Western Pennsylvania. And that is the case of Penny Doe. She's called Penny Doe because this is a Jane Doe. This is a woman who was found deceased, badly decomposed, and until today, still today, publicly, we don't know who she is. But the district attorney and the Pennsylvania State Police, based in Clarion, Pennsylvania, announced today that on Monday, the 24th, they will have a press conference where they will release the identity. They have found the identity of the woman that since the 90s, since 1990, people have just been calling Penny Doe. Now, this was the very first assignment that I ever had after being hired as a reporter. And this is not a pat on the back kind of thing because I failed at what I really thought that I could accomplish. Because I found her. I found her remains. I brought them to everybody's attention. I went to a lab that was able to extract and amplify the DNA. They were able to look at it and say, yes, we've got a very, very good DNA sample here, but they didn't have the equipment to what they call chip the DNA, which is basically turn it into a format, put it into a format that could be uploaded to GEDmatch. We even got to the point where we were like, and no other lab would work with us because we were not law enforcement. No other lab would work with us. And we got to the point where we were going to purchase the equipment. It was like $40,000 that we found it on the used market. The whole thing, man, we were looking at raising the money to be able to buy this equipment when it was actually Gabby from Gabulosis, the YouTube channel, put me in contact with a company called FHD Forensics that said that they would work on it if we could raise way less than the $40,000. So they were able to do it through the county coroner. They wouldn't do it through me, but they would do it through the county coroner that I was working with. He is the guy in charge of the remains, after all. I'm going to tell you the whole story. I'm getting way ahead of myself. I'm going to tell you the whole story. I do have to say, though, one of the things that I learned throughout this process is there are people like me that want to help, have the talent to help, have the capacity to help, but aren't allowed to help. And I understand why. I get it, but it was frustrating. But I'll tell you how I think the Pennsylvania State Police decided to go after this. This is just me guessing at this point. But I will tell you what I think. And then on Monday, I know my company is going to be live streaming the press conference. I think I will live stream the press conference as well. And I just can't wait to find out. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to be a small crew. We're going to be a lean ship, man. Lean crew on a very, very, very important ship, I guess. I don't know. It's a bad metaphor. Javi, you need to help me with my metaphors. Okay. Javi, he is the chief toggle puller and switcher and button pusher. He now is my metaphor helper too. Javi, that's no, you don't get a raise, Javi. No rate. No. I can't afford it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay. So we're going to get into the Penny Doe case. I'm going to show you some videos that I produced along the way. Of course, We've got some questions. We got 3 questions. We've got some true crime headlines to get into in the Lindsay Clancy trial, the Sandra Birchmore, the prosecution of the murder of Sandra Birchmore, the Alex Murdaugh kerfuffle, and of course we've got some good news too. So we've got 10 pounds of show to put 10 pounds of content to put in a 5-pound show. Now, but before we do that, let's start off, shall we, with the question of the day, just to get your thumbs moving, get ready, because we're a small crew and we normally have more people. Not very many people care about this case is really what it boils down to. So we're a smaller crew. But so that means that you have more homework. You're going to have to get those thumbs working so that you can interact on the live chat. The question of the day today is, what small task do you just love doing? What small task? Could be like around the house, could be whatever. What small task do you just love doing? Don't forget to put GF in your comment so that I can see it. It'll highlight on my side. It's not like I'm going to miss much today. We're 80 people. We're a small crew. But I would love it if you would do that. Tell me the answer to the question today. What small task do you love doing? Tell me where you're tuning in from. And while you are getting all warmed up, Javi's going to show us an intro. Javi, take it away. This video contains mature themes and discussions intended only for adult audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello there, my friend. Welcome back to another really important true crime conversation with me, Gavin Fish. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for tuning in, wherever you're tuning in from. And thanks for being interested in this case. This is so important to me personally that I just had to bring it to you, and I'm excited. And yesterday during our members only live stream, the after show, I talked about this a little. Well, I talked about it quite a bit. So I showed pictures and stuff like that. I want to give a heads up to you guys, okay? I am going to be showing photographs that show the remains of Penny Doe. Now, I'm not doing this to be disrespectful or to be, or anything of the sort. I'm doing it because I'm a reporter and I dug in and I found this, and it's very important that I did because nobody seemed to have known where these remains were except the people who had them. And in the state of Pennsylvania, coroners are an elected position, as they are throughout the entire United States. But what coroners don't do or didn't do back then, so they didn't pass along their files. So when one coroner would go, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to seek re-election, or he got beat. Usually it was the former. He had his files, or she had her files, and kept them in boxes up in the attic. And the next person who came in and took, they were usually like funeral directors, people who owned funeral homes, things like that. When the next guy or gal came in, they just started from scratch, just started working as a coroner. And that's exactly what happened in this case. Okay, so this is what happened. No, Gavin, don't get ahead of yourself. Let's check in to see what you guys are saying, what your answer is to the question of the day. Sharon says she loves to fold laundry. That's a task that you secretly love to do. Becky says she likes making the bed in the morning. I like having a made bed, but I do not like making the bed. My wife and I, Kimberly, my snuggly bear, my sweetie pie one and only, have an arrangement, a bargain, a deal that whoever gets out of bed last is responsible for making the bed. Fortunately for me, she is a benevolent winner. She often helps me make the bed because I'm always the last one out of the bed, always. But she's benevolent, and she loves me, and she helps me make the bed. Christine Meadows also loves making bed in the morning. Judy loves washing dishes. Jan says, soothing my grandson, watching from Virginia. Luann says, doing the dishes. And from Maine, G. Sarah Smile says, folding laundry and dishes at the end of the day. Tina May says, I enjoy vacuuming. Get something good to listen to and just kind of zone out. We we have a little robot that does the majority of our vacuuming these days, but it's not very good vacuuming. You really have to have a strong machine to do that. G. Sarah Smile is listening from Colorado. Oh my goodness, Teresa Rodriguez loves mowing her yard. That is not my favorite thing to do, though I don't know why I complain about it because I've got a riding lawnmower. It's like driving a go-kart. However, recently, just for the purpose of being more movie, getting more movement, I have been using the walk behind mower, and it's been fine. It's just not something that I love to do. Mooney says she loves playing with her pup. She's got a cute little pupperoonie and likes playing with it. Good stuff. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much for participating, getting us going. Also, I want to just bring up that I did set a goal today, a supers goal. Man, YouTube has changed their algorithm. They've changed the way that they pay their content creators, and it's a massacre out there, folks. It's a massacre. So if you don't mind, no guilt, but I invite you to try to help us reach our goal with the old super chats. Okay. Let me tell you about this case, okay? Back in 2022, I was hired as a part-time, very part-time investigative reporter. And the first assignment that I was given from my boss, Jake, was to look into the Penny Doe case. It's a case that I hadn't heard before. I had no idea, though locals, especially those that had been around a long time, they knew about. It has been around these parts in Clarion County for a long, long time. This is what happened. Okay. Actually, I don't need to tell the whole story, but just to give kind of a primer on this. The badly decomposed remains of a woman were located by children. And they called police in a rural part of Monroe Township in western Pennsylvania. They call that area the trestle. There used to be like a rail line that went through, and when it was built, it was a wooden trestle that was raised up and went across this valley. And then over time, it was just like filled in with dirt, and the wood, I guess, just decomposed inside. I don't even know. Now it's used as like a bike trail, a jogging trail, things like that. But they still call it the trestle because back in the day, it was a trestle. So near this trestle, they find this body and they bring police to it. Police find that this woman has been murdered. Now, this particular area of Clarion County is kind of near Interstate 80, but you would kind of have to know how to get back into that area that's really off the beaten path in order to discard the body. She had a crushed skull. And so it was obviously a murder. Now, over the past, but in 2022, when I looked into this, it had been over 32 years. And when I looked into it, everybody has theories as to what happened to Penny Doe, but nobody knows who Penny Doe is. Was she a local? Was she somebody who was transient coming through on Interstate 80? Met her doom. This was in the 90s. It was kind of the end of the hitchhiking era. And I'm seeing those super chats come in. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Oh, you guys are amazing. Thank you. Was she transient? Was she hitchhiking through? Was she making her way west? Where was she from? Nobody knows. But there have been people that have had theories. And when I started publishing the Ham, looking into this, I got so many tips, just so many tips from people going, well, I think it was my neighbor, or I know it was so-and-so down the street. Him and his brother bragged about, just tons of stuff like that. But I started looking into, let's find out who this person is. That is step number one. If we can solve the mystery of who Penny Doe is, then and I skipped the whole part. They call her Penny Doe because in her pants, in each pocket, were pennies. So they call her Penny Doe. And I know that that's kind of a thing, right? There are many Penny Does out there. Now she's listed on NamUs. She's I know that what am I trying to say? DNA was submitted for comparison to CODIS. I don't know how often they recheck CODIS on that, but I doubt CODIS is where we're getting our mystery solved, because if she wasn't in CODIS before she was deceased, the likelihood of her DNA making it into CODIS after that was really, really low. So and with the announcement that came out, they're announcing that they have the identity, not that they've made an arrest or anything so far. So the likelihood of it being a CODIS thing is very low. I think this is a genetic genealogy thing, and we're going to get into it, okay? But the first thing that I want to show you is I have 3 videos, each one of them about 15 minutes. So we're going to kind of go long today, guys, that I did for Explore Clarion back in 2022 that I want to show you, that tell the story. And they do it. I mean, you're going to get to see Fat Gavin in this one for sure. But these videos tell the story, and we can talk about it. We can pause and talk about it along the way, or I can check your comments and so forth. But join me, if you will, over here, and let me just go ahead and begin with this first video from September 19th, 2022. Here we go. That's my favorite car, by the way.
Every community has its secrets, mostly dark ones. I mean, why would you keep something good a secret, right? People like to talk about good things out loud. It's true they like to talk about bad things too, but there are some subjects that are just so bad,
Oh my goodness, look at me.
so beyond the pale, that they mustn't be mentioned out loud. When they are, it's...
Guys, this is not peak Fat Gavin, by the way. Keep going.
Carefully, in hushed tones, with trusted people in out-of-the-way corners of dark rooms using coded language. Governments have honed the craft of recruiting people seemingly born with just the right temperament to keep a secret. Somebody who doesn't seek credit, who thrives on knowing, not on telling. They take those recruits and put them through a refinement that removes every last inkling of the desire to spread information that they have locked inside their minds. My uncle was one of those people. He spent his career as a special agent of the FBI. He specialized as a polygraph operator and even continued to administer lie detector tests as an FBI consultant for years after his retirement. Do you know what he told me a couple years before he passed away? Nobody can keep a secret forever. Someone has been keeping a secret in Clarion County for the past 32 years. On July 22, 1990, 7-year-old Angie Klinger was out playing with her 10-year-old brother and 2 neighbor friends, a 10-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl, in the hills of Monroe Township. 32 years later, she remembers the day almost perfectly. Almost. there's some blurriness in her memory. It was the day before her 8th birthday. It was sunny. It was humid. The milkweed was tall. Their large clusters of pink flowers swayed in the wind, and the monarch butterflies had laid their eggs on them, and cocoons could be found dangling beneath their.
Real quick, Ducky, this is a great question. Did they have any idea how long she was deceased when she was found? Not specifically, but she was badly decomposed. Like, very little soft tissue left when she was found. Great question. Thank you.
Leaves. The children weren't far from home. They were making their way over to a culvert running under the railroad tracks where a creek was overflowing and watering the berry bushes. They'd brought small containers with them just in case they encountered some ripe fruit. Angie didn't see the body at first. She smelled it. It wasn't a pleasant smell, but it wasn't uncommon. Deer carcasses litter Pennsylvania's roads, victims of passing vehicles. So when Angie caught the whiff of decomposition, it didn't frighten her off. As the group of children came closer to the culvert, they saw what they guessed was causing the stench and naturally thought it was a rotting deer. It didn't take long, though, to realize the truth. Seconds, probably. This was the body of a woman. She was lying face down in a couple of inches of water, a few feet in front of the culvert. She was dressed in a black t-shirt and blue jeans. She had brown hair, though it was in the water near her head, not on it. Angie could see bones. She doesn't remember seeing very much flesh. When I met Angie for the first time, it was in the parking lot of Zion Baptist Church in Monroe Township. I had reached out to her through Facebook, hoping I'd found the right Angie Klinger. She was apprehensive about meeting a stranger who said he was a reporter and wanted to do it in a public place with good cell reception.
That part is actually really funny because I felt like a complete imposter. I had never written a report in my life. I just had been producing some true crime YouTube videos. I had reached out to a local publication to see if I could do a column on true crime in the area, and this was the assignment that I got. He said not a column, but we could use a crime reporter, right? So an investigative reporter. And in those early days, I did a lot of really digging into cases deeply before I would kind of transition to news desk, where I was really trained on how to write reports, right? But she she was like, oh, I don't know if I'm willing to meet somebody, but she ended up we met at that church, and oh man, she was amazing. Took me right to the place. Okay, we'll keep going.
She felt uneasy at all. She was going to leave. The plan was to follow her from the church to the location where she'd found the body with her brother and friends. After a short conversation, she felt comfortable taking me there. So I hopped in my car and followed her for a few minutes until we arrived at the spot, a secluded intersection of Lawrence Road beneath us and high-voltage transmission lines above. As we pulled up, I could see the culvert come into view, previously hidden by the overgrown foliage. I hadn't noticed before, but the hillside it tunneled through was actually a man-made earthen structure. On top, 20 feet or so above where I was standing, sat the old railroad bed. Back in 1992, trains would still occasionally pass, but today, its tracks have been removed to give way to hikers, dog walkers, ATVs, and side-by-sides. Angie called the hill we were looking at the trestle. Everyone calls it that. It's confusing for this California-raised kid to call a mound of dirt and rocks a trestle, but I didn't dwell on it that day. I found out later that the railroad bed was indeed laid on a trestle that was built out of wood in the 19th century. Later, rather than reinforcing it as the railroad was upgraded from narrow gauge to standard, the trestle was filled in with earth. On the day Angie and I stood in the spot where the body lay 32 years previous, Angie's demeanor changed from apprehensive about being in the middle of nowhere with a stranger to something else. Solemn, maybe. Reverent.
What do you think when you walk by here, if that's a daily thing?
I always think of it. You know, it's just sad. I think of the feeling that we had when we found her. It was terrifying. You know, we ran. And then we felt like someone was watching us because you just have that terrifying, you know, adrenaline. I don't think I ever ran so fast. Like, seriously. We ran. We ran back and we ran to the neighbor's house. My mom still says, she's like, I was out on the porch, sweeping the porch, and I remember you guys running by. I don't know why we didn't, because the neighbor kids were older, a little bit. Well, the one was, she was older. And we ran up there, and then that's when we called the authorities. And then my mom remembers us all going and back down by, but we were in the back of their pickup truck, in the back cab part. And then we went back and got her. And then when the authorities got here, my mom actually went in. I was one of two that chose to not go back in to show them. One of the other neighbor kid and I sat in the back of the truck, and the rest of them went in.
Can imagine why. 7 years old.
Where was the truck parked? Is it just parked right over
Down
here?
there, yeah, just alongside the road. And there was cops, and I don't remember how many, you know. I don't remember little details like that. Some I don't remember much. It was kind of a blur, I think, because it was traumatizing, I believe, you know.
Yeah. What were you like? I've read stories that you were berry picking and stuff like that.
We were picking berries. I mean, it's not like we came out to pick berries. That was our full intention, but we did have, that's just stuff we did. Like, we would pick berries if we were out and saw berries. I think we did have a couple containers, but there was berries along, like, if you want to walk over here.
Sure.
So we were just kind of playing in this area. A little creek. Now it's really dried up right now. There's a block of rain here. Sometimes when we have heavy rain, this is full and it's a waterway that'll go down.
This area, by the way, you can kind of see the tunnel right there. The size of it is actually it's kind of hard to tell on the video. It's definitely tall enough for a person like me to walk through. I'm 6'2". I can walk through just fine. If you're on a side-by-side or a quad runner or something like that, an off-road golf car type of thing, you can make it through there, but a full car really can't make it through there. It's kind of a hiking tunnel more than anything. Though you can see from the tracks that wheeled vehicles go back there quite a lot. But this is a very typical kind of area out here in western Pennsylvania. Very, very green. In fact, if anything, because of the high voltage lines, this is a less grown area, right? Typically, all of this is just surrounded by dense hardwood forest. So this would be a place that the kids would just play because it is a place that they could play.
When we're on that side.
So does the water come through here?
Yeah, it's just completely dried up right now. It usually has water in it. I'm really blown away right now. I haven't been down here for a while. But yeah, and then riders ride through here too. You can go up around and then onto the trestles. And the train, where the train used to run, it was actually running at that time. I mean, not physically while we were here, but they did have, the railroad was active then. But now it's a trail. It's a rider trail. It's a known rider trail. It'll take you wherever you want to go pretty much. But you can ride through here and up around and get on the trestle track. But yeah, we were just playing around, and I think there was berries up on that bank. And then right here, the water comes through and goes down in there. Of course, it's all grown over now. It wasn't as bad, but she was right down in here.
Oh.
Yeah.
I had imagined that she was through the tunnel.
Nope, she was on this side. In fact, she was like right in here.
2 days later, their discovery was mentioned in a small blurb in the Clarion News. Quote, Monroe Township. A body of an unknown white female, estimated to be in her teen years, was found by children hiking through the woods near Township Route 535, 4/10 mile west of State Route 2012 at 1 p.m. July 22nd. Time and cause of death and identity are under investigation.
I'm just going to pause it for a second. I have to tell you, sometime between 1990 and 2022, the township routes were all renamed. And so it was so hard for me to find. I went looking all over the place trying to find Township Route 535, 4/10 of a mile west of State Route to 2012. I tried and tried and tried and tried, and I drove all over Clarion County, could not find it. And it was only once I was in touch with Angie Klinger that she told me where it was. I got to go see it. I actually went through the tunnel, and I bet this is the place. And then later on, when I came back and said I went and checked it out, was she here? And she's like, no, that's not really where she was. And that's when she agreed, yeah, we probably can meet up. It was so cool of her to do this.
Anyone with information concerning this matter should contact Pennsylvania State Police. Close quote. Another 2 days passed, and another blurb was published in the Clarion News. Quote, Clarion. State police report little progress in connection with the investigation of a body discovered by two youths hiking in Monroe Township July 22nd, and are appealing to the public for any information that might be related. We're looking for information, anything that somebody can supply us with any type of lead, Corporal Dan Fiscus told the Clarion News. We don't have anything right now to work with. We have the jaw and skull, and it will take time to put that all together. Positive identification may not ever be possible. Although identification may not be possible, police say identification is essential to the investigation, hence the public appeal for information. Close.
Right, and we still, it's now 36 years, and on Monday, we should know who she is. And the district attorney has said that they will show us photos of her. They know exactly who she is now. They're going to give us lots of background information on her. We're going to find out some things that we've never known before, and hopefully that will lead to somebody knowing something. But I digress.
Quote. The article goes on to report that an autopsy was conducted in Allegheny County and that police believed that the woman suffered blunt force trauma to the head. Police also believed that the woman had been dead 1 to 3 months when she was found.
Oh, there's your answer. 1 to 3
They
months.
combed through missing persons reports from Clarion County and the surrounding area. No match. Over the years, police have leaked out bits of information about their Jane Doe case, hoping that they might jog somebody's memory. For example, they divulged that she was wearing size 910 Gitano brand jeans.
I'm going to pause here for a second, guys, just real quick. This is the only document, this one that is on the screen right now, this is the only document that through my freedom of, it's called the right to know law out here, through my right to know law request, this is the only document, I'll bring it up right now, that anybody had on this case. Now, of course, they're investigative documents they can't release. I'm sure there's a thin investigative file. But after, sending in my right to know law request to all of the different county divisions and all that stuff, one paragraph, what is it? It's 2 paragraphs. That was all I was able to get. That was it. So there was, it was amazing that we were able to go any further than this. Just, it was miraculous that we found her remains, and we will get to that here in a bit.
She wore a Stoplight California brand black button-down short-sleeve shirt with an attached floral print vest. Her panties were Fruit of the Loom size 7. She wasn't wearing shoes and socks, nor a bra. Her teeth were in good condition. Investigators surmised that she may have come from somewhere with fluoridated water. Lastly, there was a penny in each of her front pockets. It's that last detail that caused many to refer to the victim as Penny Doe. Angie and I spent about 30 minutes together at the trestle that day that we met. As we left, I glanced at the time. It had been 32 years, 13 days, and about 44 minutes since Angie, her brother, and their friends made their grim discovery. 32 years, 13 days, and about 44 minutes that somebody had been keeping Penny Doe's identity a secret. In that moment, my mind flashed back to the conversation I had with my FBI special agent uncle a couple of years before he died. And that conversation gives me hope. I think that Penny Doe's identity will be discovered. And that little ray of belief is enough for me to cling on to as I dig into the mystery that has baffled investigators for more than 3 decades. It will take me from lead to lead. I will uncover documents never before released. I will speak with medico-legal death investigators, forensic scientists, anthropologists, and geneticists. The purpose of everything I do as I investigate this case will be to prove what my uncle told me all those years ago. Nobody can keep a secret forever.
That was the first video that
Just being a mom now, all them years I was little, I didn't give it much thought, but the last 5 years it's been wearing on me. Every month around my birthday time, I think of her, and we still walk here, so I think of her. And I just think, like, I'm a woman, I'm a mom, somebody's missing somebody. It's just sad. So if there's anything I can do to try to help, at least identify who she is, I mean, that'd be great for anybody. It's great that there's interest in it.
All right. And that was the first video that I produced. And sure enough, I was going to uncover some documents. I was going to meet with all of those people, and I was going to fail. I totally was going to fail at finding Penny Doe's identity. Fortunately, somebody else was looking too, and hopefully on Monday we are going to find out who that what that identity is. Okay, the next video I did, about the same length. Let me just check in on your comments here. I think you're, yep, you've got you keep talking, guys. Thanks so much for that. And thank you for keeping this the classiest live chat in all of YouTube. I appreciate it. All right, so that was, what was that? That was September 19th, 2022. On October 3rd, 2022, we published this video, and happened to be my birthday. So let's see what my report came back at on October 3rd, 2022. Here we go.
One of the frustrations I have anytime I look into a cold case is the lack of real information available to the public. The Penny Doe case is no exception. If you don't know this about me, looking into unsolved violent crimes is a passion of mine. It's why I have my YouTube channel. I haven't had it long, only a couple of years, but one thing that ties each case I look into with all the others is the difficulty I have in digging out new info. In Penny's case, I ran into some roadblocks pretty early on, but don't worry, with the help of a few key people, we were able to push through them. The first person I contacted after speaking with Angie Klinger about Penny Doe was Dan Shingle.
Let me pause it here for a second. This guy is Dan Shingledecker. Dan Shingledecker is the Clarion County coroner, which I'm sure that I'm going to explain in this video here in just a minute. But this guy's a hero, okay? Dan Shingledecker is a hero. He's elected as the coroner, but it is his part-time job. He has a full-time job. He works in the funeral industry, and he has tons of stuff to do. But every time I called him, he was like, "Gavin, how can I help?" He did not ever say, "I don't have time for you today, Gavin." He didn't do any of that. He was just like, "How can I help?" And he pointed me in, oh my goodness. He pointed me in the right direction over and over and over again. Plus, he explained to me why I was having the difficulty in finding documents and so forth. The whole thing that I told you before about having no unified system, that information came from Dan. Dan, he and I are friendly. I saw him just like a few days ago. Great guy, and I just want to point out, if it was not for Dan Shingledecker, I am positive, this is just my opinion, but I'm positive we would not have an identification coming next month, which means they already have an identification. It's just a public announcement of the identification, right? So Penny Doe has been identified. We are going to find out on Monday what her identity is, but without Dan Shingledecker, never would have happened. All right, let's keep playing it.
Dan currently serves as the Clarion County coroner, a post he's had since the 2019 death of Coroner Randall Stamm. I reached out to Dan through email, and he was extremely quick to reply. In fact, each time I've reached out, he's continued to respond quickly and thoroughly. The first thing I asked him for was Penny's autopsy report. It had never been released publicly. And while the right to know law exempts it from public disclosure, it's at the discretion of those public officials who have a copy. In short, it's not illegal or unethical for them to release it. They just almost never do. Dan replied that he wasn't the coroner all the way back in 1990 and that there wasn't a central records storage back then. But he said he knew who the coroner was, so he'd reach out to him. Over the next couple of weeks, Dan would update me on his search for the autopsy report. Eventually, having gone through everything he had access to, he let me know it was a no-go. He suggested that I go to the prothonotary's office and see if they had anything. The following day, I drove from Franklin up to Clarion and stopped by the county courthouse. I was directed to the prothonotary's office where I stated my business. I was invited back into the records room where a staff member informed me that while I was welcome to look through anything, the coroner's office isn't required to send their documents into the prothonotary for storage.
By the way, this experience was so much fun. I loved this moment. They just completely helped. It was like the opposite of going to the DMV. How can I be of assistance? Clarion County, I mean, by and large, except the court system, which has very good reasons why they don't, but has always been super helpful. Anytime they don't have to do this, and yet they've been helpful anytime I've asked them. It's really cool.
And sure enough, after a thorough search, I discovered they didn't have anything on Penny's case. The next time I heard from Dan, he told me that back in the 90s, they did a complete facial reconstruction with Dr. Dirkmaat. Dr. Dennis Dirkmaat is the chair of the Department of Applied Forensic Sciences at Mercyhurst University. Dan suggested I reach out to him to see if he had anything related to the case. I did, and heard back from him in an email where he told me that he probably had something and that he'd have one of his grad students look through his old things. About a week later, I got an email from him saying that he'd found a report that he did for the Clarion Coroner's Office back in 1991. He attached the report to his email. We are also still curating the bones, he told me. I will have the students review the bones for revised estimates of age, sex, stature.
Guys, I could not believe this. When I got that document and that email, I was absolutely blown away. Yeah, I have my report, and oh, by the way, I still have her bones. I'll have one of my students take a look. I was like, what? You still have her remains? He's like, yeah, I got them. It was maybe the coolest moment of of my YouTube career, man. It was so cool. All right.
When I asked Dr. Dirkmaat if I could come up to witness his students' review of Penny's bones, he replied, sure, we can schedule that anytime.
I couldn't believe
He
it.
later clarified that I'd need the permission of the Clarion County coroner. Dr. Dirk Matt's report is titled Forensic Anthropological Analysis of the Monroe Township Human Remains, Clarion County, Pennsylvania. It's dated June 26, 1991. Inside, there are some details about Penny Doe that have never been released. You can read the entire report. I'll link it in the article. The first thing we learned from the report is that Dr. Dirk Matt determined in 1991 that Penny was somewhere between 22 and 29 years old. This is different than what has been reported previously. Penny Doe's listing on NamUs, the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, lists her age range as somewhere between 20 and 40. This is likely due to the reporting that was done on the case back in 1990. Sometimes a police officer or investigator will tell a reporter an opinion and it just sticks. So now, for the first time, we can confirm her age range is much narrower. Penny's NamUs listing also shows her height to be 4 foot 10 inches tall. Dr. Dirk Matt's report shows her estimated height to be about 5'3". Again, early estimates of Penny's height were given to the press, and that has become gospel over time. But now we know her actual height. Dr. Dirk Matt also noted a couple of interesting things. First, the inferior portion of Penny's sternum was slightly deformed. He noted, however, that this may not have been noticeable when she was alive. Second, Penny never suffered a broken bone during her life, except for the broken fibula, which Dr. Dirk Matt noted likely occurred around the time of her death. With this new information in hand, I became excited to travel up to Erie.
By the way, she also had a crushed skull. I can show you that.
To see Penny's bones, which are still curated by Dr. Dirk Matt. After obtaining permission from Dan Shingledecker, I reached out to him and scheduled a day and time to make the trip. September 6th at 1:30 in the afternoon. I reached out to Angie and another source I've been working with on the case, whose name I'm withholding, and invited them to come with me. Unfortunately, plans fell through as the day approached. So I made the trip alone and met up with my editor and a member of Dan Shingledecker's staff. When we arrived at Dr. Dirk Matt's office, he was all ready for us.
Trying to figure out the age of the individual, we can take a look at an overall view of it, what we call a gestalt. And one of the things that I look at is the vertebral borders here. As we age, just from walking around, we get lipping and all this other thing. So for somebody who's 60, there's going to be a lot of lipping. Somebody who's 20, there's going to be very little. So we can look at some of the lowest. We'd see in the lumbar vertebrae, that would show up first. This one is very smooth and round, indicating that it's a young person, probably 20s at the oldest, 30s. But then look at some other characteristics, like here is part of the collarbone, the clavicle, and this little piece of bone fuses there, one of the last ones of the body. I can see that it's in the process of fusing. So that would give me an idea that this person is probably in their 20s. I don't see any indication that they're not 40s. It's everything indicates that they're probably older or younger than 30s as well. We have some other indications we can look at, like in the base of the skull here. This fuses in the late teens. This one is fused, so Yeah, just from this overall view, I'd say this is somebody in their 20s, mid-20s. The estimate that we would provide would be like 20 to 35 would be a general one, but more likely 20 to 30. I seem to recall that I didn't, that they may have been sent off to Colorado at some point.
Why did they go to Colorado?
I think for the facial reconstruction, they may have been, as we can see in here that there is some trauma, that they put some wax and they created they put clay on a cast of the skull, which is what's in here. So they're in Colorado. They made a cast of the skull and then put clay on it.
Wow.
The nose over the years has been compressed a little bit. The years. So that's why they filled it in with wax here. So
I'll be curious to see from her pictures how close she looks to the clay, artist's interpretation of what she may have looked like.
When you pulled off the cast, it wouldn't break it. So I think at the time that I received it, there was this evidence that they had taken samples for DNA. But that was a long time ago in the early stages of DNA.
Yeah.
So it might be useful to try it again.
I came away from my meeting with Dr. Dirkmaat with a sense of enthusiasm. In just a few short weeks, I'd gone from searching microtape images of old newspapers to standing in the spot where Penny was discovered with one of the people who discovered her, to reading a detailed report about her remains done by a forensic anthropologist, to standing in a classroom at Mercyhurst University inspecting her bones. That's quite a journey, and I've learned so much about the case that's never been publicly known. So where will I go from here? Well, Penny's DNA was submitted to the National Combined DNA Index System, better known as CODIS, back in either 1990 or 1991. We learned while we were with Dr. Dirkmaat that another sample was sent into CODIS in 2012. While that's terrific news that investigators have taken it that far, there's still a problem that's impeding them from figuring out who Penny is, and it's the fact that CODIS itself is very limited. The DNA technology that's used in CODIS requires there to be a direct one-to-one or person-to-person match in order to find out who the person is. That means that a known sample of Penny Doe's DNA has to have been submitted to CODIS by somebody who knew her in order for it to work. So, if her parents, for example, reported their daughter as missing and then submitted a hair sample to investigators, and then investigators extracted the DNA from the sample, tested it, and uploaded the
Hey, this question from Dandelions, just real quick. Would this have been solved had you not gotten in touch with the current coroner and got him involved? I don't know. I'm not sure. And I'm not taking credit for this at all. After I did this, there were a lot of channels that started to, and even like NBC, there were big media companies that picked up the story and ran with it after my series was published. And then some pretty big YouTube channels did it as well. These videos that you're looking here are from Explore Clarion, which is one of the publications that my company produces. So I don't know, maybe state police We're getting a little pressure. I don't know, but I will tell you the rest of the story here in just a little bit. Okay? Tell you the rest of the story.
Results to CODIS. Once investigators in Clarion County uploaded Penny's DNA results, there would have been a match, and that would have identified her. But so far, no match has ever been made. Since the 1990s, there have been huge advancements in DNA technology. One such advancement is known as genetic genealogy. With this technology, there doesn't have to be a one-to-one match. Instead, Penny's DNA could be retested and uploaded to a database called GEDmatch. GEDmatch compiles huge amounts of DNA data, which are mostly voluntarily uploaded by people who've done genetic testing through services like Ancestry DNA and 23andMe. If any relative's DNA has been uploaded to GEDmatch, even if that person is more distantly related, genetic genealogists would be able to trace Penny's DNA to others, effectively triangulating her place in the family tree, which would end in a successful identification.
Which
My
I
next
believe is
step
what happened.
is to find a lab who can extract Penny's DNA from a sample from Dr. Dirk Matt's curated bones. Test it using a method that's compatible with genetic genealogy and upload the results to GEDmatch. The next time I update you on this case, that's what I'll be doing.
Okay, so that was October 3rd, 2022. All right. You guys are being so patient with me, but it just feels better to show you the work as I did it rather than tell you the story real quick, right? Okay, so the final video I want to show you is part 3 from November 23rd of 2022. Again, now at this point, I have found a lab who wanted to remain private. They didn't want me to put it out there who they were, but they were willing to take a sample of the bone, try to extract DNA, try to amplify that DNA. What they did not have the ability to do was what do they call it? Chip it to turn it into an uploadable data file. They wanted to be able to send that information off to another lab. So that's where we are in the story, November 23rd, 2022. Here we go. Hi there. I'm Gavin Fish with ExploreClarion.com, and this is part 3 in an ongoing investigative series trying to find out the identity of a woman we only know as Penny Doe. Her remains were found by children in Monroe Township in 1990. We know that she was murdered, but we don't know who killed her. We don't even know who she is. So if this is the first part in the series that you're seeing, please go back and take a look at the 2 previous installments. In this part, I'm going to be talking about DNA. Extracting DNA out of 32-year-old bones is pretty tricky business. Let me actually pause and just describe it. In Dr. Dirk Matt's report, which I actually have up in front of me, it talks about what the cleaning process was. Let me bring this up for you so you can see it. It talks about the cleaning process. So Penny's bones were, if memory serves, I haven't read this today. I haven't read this in a couple of years. But if memory serves, they removed the clothing from her, right? And then after the autopsy and her remains went to Dr. Dirkmaat, who was at the University of Pittsburgh at the time, not at Mercyhurst. They were put into a container, and this, I'm not telling you this to be disrespectful to Penny. I'm just like to celebrate the work that has to go into this to make this identification 36 years later, right? They were put in with flesh-eating insects who pretty much cleaned off everything down to the bone, and then they were cleaned with a solution like Simple Green. So the question is, would the DNA have survived in the remains knowing that it went through a chemical process to clean it? They had been able to extract DNA in the 90s. They were able to extract DNA in 2012, but in 2022, were they going to be able to? And we were questioning that. We didn't know if that was going to be possible. Okay, I'll continue with the video.
What I'm learning is that in order for DNA to survive, the right conditions must be present. Now, I talked with a geneticist about a year ago that told me that somebody he knew was able to extract DNA from mammoth fur that was purchased off of eBay. I figured that if DNA could be extracted from an Arctic mammal that's been extinct for some 4,000 years, then getting DNA from 32-year-old remains of a yet-to-be-identified woman wouldn't be that much of a problem. It turns out that I may be wrong about that. But somebody out there knows Penny's real name and probably wonders whatever happened to her. So if I can, I want to use DNA to find that person. But there are several steps that I need to go through in order to make that happen. And as I'm learning, it's actually a long shot. But we're going to take that shot anyway. After my last story on this case, several people reached out to me from different organizations offering to help extract DNA from the bones that Dr. Dirkmaat has been curating at Mercyhurst University all these years. From all the prospects, I selected two. The first one will be the one that extracts the DNA, and the other will be the one to do the genotyping,
Which
and
didn't
I'll
turn
get
out.
to that in a minute. So after I selected my two volunteers, I began the process of attempting to get a sample of Penny's DNA. Now, I want to point out here that both labs that I chose to work with here asked to remain anonymous. So to get the sample of the DNA, I needed to get a sample of Penny's bones. So I reached out to Clarion County Coroner Dan Shingledecker
Hero.
shortly after I'd made my choice on the labs, and I asked him if he'd be willing to request a sample of Penny's bones from Dr. Dirkmaat. He agreed. And a few days later, I received an email saying he had the sample. Then we worked together to get the sample over to the lab. I must say once again, Dan has been instrumental in helping me as I try to solve this mystery. So thank you, Mr. Shingledecker.
Dan
Thank
is
you
the
very
best,
much.
guys. Dan is the best.
So once the sample was sent to the first lab, I made the long drive from my home in Venango County to the lab to meet with my genetics volunteer to watch them at work. But to my surprise, I was asked to do the extraction myself. Now, I don't want to exaggerate my part in this. I definitely have no idea what I'm doing. I was just the hands that did the work under the watchful eye, under the supervision of a trained technician. Step one was to pulverize some of the bone. I have to say, this made me a little uncomfortable knowing that these are the remains of a person, of a young woman. But because bones are porous, it was explained to me DNA would be most likely to be intact inside the bone rather than on the surface. So we took a common cordless drill and dug into the bone, leaving several small holes behind. The bone dust then fell onto a sanitized tray where I collected it with a small metal spatula and put it into 6 small plastic tubes.
This may have been the funnest thing.
From
I've
there,
done
we added
ever.
2 solutions to the tubes, one called a buffer and another which is called proteinase K solution. From there, the tubes went into an incubator for 24 hours, which took the tubes up to 60 degrees Celsius, which is 140 degrees Fahrenheit. This prepared Penny's bone dust for DNA extraction and amplification. The whole process took about 48 hours. So extraction is the process of removing the DNA from the other parts of the cells in Penny's remains. Speaking as a total layperson who really doesn't understand what's happening chemically, basically what happens is that the solution at that temperature, the cells begin to break down. And then there's a process of separating the DNA molecules from the other cell fragments. And once you have that pure DNA separated off, you can move on to the next step, which is amplification. Amplification is the process of making copies of the DNA you extracted. And it just completely fascinates me that this is even possible to do in a lab setting. I mean, our bodies do it all the time. They're designed that way. But the fact that somebody figured out a way to do it on purpose, it just boggles my mind. And that somebody was a chemist named Cary Mullis. He developed a process called polymerase chain reaction, or PCR. He actually won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry for this process. And this is how PCR works. By heating the
Notice he won the Nobel Prize in 1993, 3 years after Penny Doe was murdered. But, I mean, the polymerase chain reaction was developed before that, but he won the Nobel Prize 3 years after Penny Doe died.
DNA molecules above 90 degrees Celsius, that's about 194 degrees Fahrenheit, the two strands of the molecule, we know that DNA is a double helical kind of a ladder, right? So the two strands are separated, they're like split from one another. And then by adding an enzyme to the solution that the DNA is suspended in, one that is present in our bodies all the time, the other side of the strand of molecules is built on to each of the strands that were divided, leaving you with two exact copies of the original DNA molecule. And each time the solution is heated up above that 90 Celsius mark and then cooled down below it again, the quantity of DNA molecules in the solution doubles. Now, this is a very basic explanation reflecting my understanding of it. But the part that blew my mind is that the enzyme in our bodies that reads the strand of the DNA molecule and then builds on the other side can't actually survive at 90 degrees Celsius. However, organisms that live in the deepest part of the ocean next to like volcanic vents have enzymes that thrive above 90 degrees C. And it turns out that their DNA is replicated in the same way ours is. So scientists use the polymerase enzyme from those organisms to amplify human and other DNA in a lab. Like I said, it's completely mind-boggling. So getting back to that cycle of heating and cooling, right? Each time the solution is heated above 90 and then cooled, that cycle takes about 5 minutes before it's done again. So that means if you started with one DNA molecule, at the end of an hour, you would have 2,048 copies of the original molecule. And after 2 hours, you'd have 8,388,608. And that's the process that Penny's DNA went through over the 24 hours that I left the lab. So a couple days later, I reached out to my volunteer to see if we'd been successful in extracting and amplifying Penny's DNA. And their answer was, there wasn't as much as I'd hoped, but I think I've amplified it enough for genotyping. And with that, they sent the DNA off to lab number 2. And from that point on, it's simply a waiting game for me. Now,
I should pause here and say they weren't successful at lab number 2. Really what I won't get into the details, but lab number 2 fell through. Let's just put it that way. Lab number 2 fell through.
While we're waiting, we need to understand that and figure out something called genetic genealogy. Genetic genealogy is the practice of finding people who share certain segments of each other's genetic code. So in our case, we want to find people that have segments that are an exact match for segments of Penny Doe's DNA. Now, getting back to that DNA molecule that is arranged in that helical ladder that we've all seen depictions of, but I should say in those depictions, we usually see a small segment. In reality, each strand of our DNA is about 6 feet long and about 1/40,000th of the thickness of a human hair. And I've even read that because of the trillions of cells in our body, if you were to take all the DNA strands in the human body and put them end to end, it would wrap around our solar system several times. It's that long, right? But anyway, the rungs on the ladder are made up of, each rung is made up of a pair of what are called bases. And there are really only 4 bases. There are actually only 4 different bases. They're called guanine, cytosine, adenine, and thymine. And when mapping your DNA, scientists take the first letter of each base and write out the genetic code as a long word spelled out using G, C, A, and T, the first letter of those bases. And when I say it's a long word, I mean it's really long. In the human genome, there are about 3 billion pairs of bases in our DNA. So our genetic code is a word with about 6 billion letters. And in all the human family, we share about 99.9% of the same genetic code. And that doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what your ancestry is, what your sex is. We all share about 99.9% of the same genetic code. But there are important segments in that code that we know, and by we I mean people who study this, they tend to be different person to person. So what lab number 2 has to do is break up the code into segments and then filter out the 99.9% of the code that we all share, leaving only the places where we differ. But then, because that data set is still too big at about 30 million letters of code, they have to filter it even more. And in the end, they'll produce a report that has between 300,000 and 600,000 letters of code and will send it back to me. And at that point,
I wish this could have happened.
All of the lab work will be done and I'll be left to do the genetic genealogy, something I've never done before. And this is the process of comparing the report I get back from the second lab with reports from others who've uploaded their genetic information, similar reports, to public DNA databases. And hopefully we can find somebody who has a match for a few of the segments of Penny's DNA, making them a genetic relative. And then it's all about finding the genealogy of that person and tracing it back to a common ancestor of Penny's and working back down the family tree until we find the identity of Penny herself. Now, I love family history research, but I've never done anything like this before. The good news is, though, that I have a couple more volunteers waiting in the wings to help me on that part of my journey. So in the fourth part of this series, I hope to be done with the genetic genealogy research and may even know who Penny Doe is.
Unfortunately, part 4 never came because lab number 2 fell through. But I thought it was important to share the genetic genealogy part of that because that is ultimately what would have happened, right? That's definitely what Pennsylvania State Police did in order to find her identity. The likelihood that her identity came out of CODIS is very low. It would have had to have been done, in at least in my opinion, through genetic genealogy. So I had a genetic genealogist. I am a hobbyist genealogist. I love family history. I was really looking forward to learning some of it, working on it. But unfortunately, it just couldn't happen because, lab number 2 fell through. But I guess PSP has done it. So on Monday, we are going to find out who Penny Doe is. Let me bring up, I want to show you, I've got a couple of, just go through some of my photos here, just so you can see. There's the scene of where they found her, not necessarily the scene of the crime, but where they found her. This is, so far, this is Penny's casket, right? She is still evidence. And I am sure that Dan Shingledecker is looking forward to getting those remains properly interred with Penny's family. In fact, when Dan and I talked last week, it was for the purpose of retrieving that piece of femur and getting that back to him. And I'm sure that is so that her remains can be whole and can be sent for a respectful and loving burial or cremation, or however her family chooses to inter her or not, right? However that is. Show you a couple of pictures. This is the fragment of her femur that we worked on. You can see the little holes that we drilled out. You can see the dust of her bones that was collected in that tray, and gone through the whole process. It was a fascinating, really, really amazing process to go through, which I explained in that video. I don't need to explain it again, but so much has gone into so many resources, so many working hours, because everything that I did would have had to have been redone by law enforcement. So I just, whoever did the work, you probably won't ever be known, but I want you to know that I personally am grateful for what you have done. Now, one of the questions that was here is, you guys have brought up a couple times, did my work lead to the identity of Penny Doe? I think that would be a stretch to claim that, right? But I will tell you that in 2024, there was a murder case that was tried in Clarion County that I covered. The man who was convicted of murder was a man named Jeremy Daly. One day during the trial, one of the Pennsylvania State Troopers, one of the homicide detectives who had been at the trial, she had actually testified at the trial. She is loved out here. She is well respected. Everybody who I didn't personally know her, but everybody who did really spoke highly of her, and I had spoken to her on the phone before on another case. I approached her it was the first time we were face to face, the first time we ever met. I approached her and introduced myself, and I told her about this case that Dr. Dirkmaat Dr. Dirkmaat at Mercyhurst University was still curating the remains of Penny Doe. I knew the name or the number of the case because the case number is right here. MC91-005. I was able to give her that case number. It's all over the documents as well. I told her that she could go to Explore Clarion's website. She could see the stuff that I had done, the reports that I had written. And I told her, I know that DNA remains in her bones, that it is viable, that it is extractable, that it is amplifiable. And if she could do it, if the PSP could do it, they could identify her. I told her that in 2024. I have not spoken to her since. I don't know if they were working on it in parallel. I mean, they've had this case since 1990. Maybe they were doing the same thing at the same time. I don't know. I do think that anytime the media is shining a light on something, that does give an incentive for people who have the power to act. And I'm not saying that they don't want to anyway, or that they aren't anyway. I'm just saying that it often does kind of push things along. It's amazing how many things get done in public service that is typically not overseen by the public anyway. It's interesting how often things get finished when there's a public spotlight on that thing. So I don't know if this reporting contributed to it. I also Explore Clarion, this publication that my company produces, had written multiple articles about the Penny Doe case over the years, starting in about 2014. So it could have been those, right? So I don't know. Also, I know Gabby did it. I know several people did it. I know NBC News picked it up. So I don't know, right? I don't know. I don't even care. I don't care. What I care about is that we have an identity of Penny Doe that we are going to find out on Monday. I talked to District Attorney Drew Welsh this morning, and on the record. And when I said, "Hey, Drew, it's Gavin," he's like, "Hey, Gavin, how you doing?" I was like, "I'm excited," and he laughed and he goes, "I thought you would be." It was really fun. And I love living in small places where we can know each other, right? It's not like Drew and I are friends, but we're cordial. We see each other from time to time. And he knew that I was enthusiastic about this case. And boy, am I glad for him and for the state police for doing their hard work. Let me just see if there are any other comments that I want to just check. Yeah, a couple comments here. Sadly, people go missing all the time, right? The amount of people that go missing every year in America is astronomical, says Dandelions. I don't know if the internet is being used for good and not the bad. Yeah, it's both. Debbie saying, do you think the wait is to notify all the family? I think that's already happened because of the genetic genealogy they would have had to confirm, right? Typically what happens is they will do the genetic genealogy and they will work back until they find a common ancestor of somebody in the public database. And then they will go and do the genealogy of that person in the public database and look for people who may be more closely related to the victim. And then they will approach those people, ask for samples of their DNA, and then do a comparison to confirm. So it's a long process. And I wanted to be the one that made that call. I wanted to say, hey, I did it privately. But I understand there's a reason why we don't do that. I mean, I've learned that over the course of this investigation, working with other forensic labs. I get it. But that is the process. So this family already knows. We know from Drew Welsh, the DA, and from the PSP that they are going to show pictures of Penny at their press conference on Monday. That tells me that they have been in touch with the family and they have gotten those photos, right? So the wait, I think, is just so that they can put out the information in a controlled manner. I don't think that they have a suspect yet, but we will find out on Monday. In Clarion County, there are rumors, many, many rumors about who may have done this to Penny. And again, not to be disrespectful to Penny, this is, let me see if I brought up, no, that's the wrong side. I actually don't have it. Oh yeah, I do. I'm gonna zoom in here. That is the damage to her skull. Right. So this was not I don't think this was an accident. Well, somebody dumped her. Even if it was an accident, there was a crime that was committed. Right. So and to me it looks like a baseball bat. And Dr. Dirkmott in his report talked about it being an implement. Like she was purposefully hurt. So anyway, there are all sorts of rumors about who may have done this, people that have talked over the years, people that say they heard people talk over the years, or they know a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy. There's lots of that, right? But if we know her identity and we can track her movement and figure out who the people are that she associated with, if any of those are local, or if any of those were like truck drivers or travelers or something like that would have traveled where she came from. I'm just like thinking of these kinds of things. I think that investigators can put it together. Just in order for all the dominoes to fall, the identity domino needs to fall. And that has already happened now, which is pretty great. Dandelion saying, great job reporting and bringing a huge spotlight to the case. Thank you. I appreciate it. Just Ducky saying, great review to bring us all up to date. Thanks so much. Lots of attaboys. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate everything that you are saying. Tina May asking, how can someone be missing a family member this long and not come forward? Yeah, that's a question that I ask myself a lot, but it happens so often, right? It just happens so often. So I'm hoping that members of that family are like, I wonder if they were like, well, yeah, she ran away. She went to California. Never heard from her again. Maybe she did. Maybe she was reported missing, but she was reported missing in some podunk little hamlet somewhere in America, right? It's like there's so many different possibilities. Just very, very, very awesome. Mooney says, so will Monday's video be the presser? I think I will do both videos. I think I will do the presser in the morning, maybe do a follow-up in the evening. That's my idea. The presser is at 11 a.m. Eastern time. I think I'm just going to take my phone and be there, for that part of it. I'll live stream it from my phone. I will try to do some good audio. But that is what we will do. Now, guys, we may be finished talking about this case for now, but we do have a little bit more. I know that tonight is going a little bit long, but we have some headlines to get to. We've got some good news to get to, even though this whole video has been about good news, right? Like this, to me, this is good. I know we're talking about crime, but this is good news. But we're going to do one more piece of good news. But before we get to that, how about we hop into 3 questions? Here we go.
It's 3 questions with Gavin Fish.
Hey guys, in this segment, I answer questions that you send in to me to 3questions@gavinfish.com, 3questions@gavinfish.com, all spelled out. And my solemn promise to you is you can ask me any question you want. Nothing's off the table. And I will answer every single question that comes in, but I will do so 3 at a time in the order of my choosing. Question number 1 comes to us from Laura. Laura says, what is a household chore that you absolutely avoid? No, my wife kind of forces me to do everything. No, she does the laundry. She has a circle around the laundry. No, that's not true. Hang on. Recently, I have decided that I am in charge of washing my own shirts because I like fabrics that are natural that tend to shrink unless you really take care of them. So I am doing that. Household chore that I absolutely avoid. I don't know. I chip in. I pitch in. I do the best I can. I vacuum. I mop. I clean. I sweep. I do the dishes. I pressure wash the siding. I mow the lawn. I don't want to do any of it, but I do it. And then I especially do the ones that will make me feel manly, like, I don't know, changing an alternator or, something like that. I do those things. So I guess I don't avoid, well, I guess I avoid all household chores, but I do them too. I don't know, Laura. Question number 2, also from Laura, the same Laura. What is a household chore you secretly do not mind? Guys, I love ironing. I love ironing. My mom taught us all how to iron and stopped ironing for us when I was 10. So I have been ironing my own clothes since then. I love it. We currently, and this has been pretty new development, but I was on a business trip once staying in a friend's house in Paris, and he happened to have the world's greatest iron. It had like a base station that was full of water, and it had, it was like this steam on demand, amazing iron. We finally got one of those, and that has made ironing even more fun for me. I don't know. It's just satisfying. I like making the creases. I like making the collar and the cuffs stiff. I love wearing a nicely pressed, well-fitting shirt. I guess that's my favorite thing. I press my pants too. You don't iron pants, or trousers anyway. You press them. But so I like to iron and I like to press. That is something that I love to do. And I never avoid it. I do mine, I do everybody's. I do Kimberly's, I do the kids. I enjoy it. And question number 3 from Kelly asking if I like to grocery shop. I do like to grocery shop. The problem is, when I grocery shop, I don't stick to the list at all. At all. I do not stick to the list at all. So Kimberly prefers it if I don't, but I occasionally do, including last night. I did the old shopperoonie just for a few things that needed to be put into the refrigerator. So those are the questions. You guys tell me the answer to those questions for you. What's a household chore that you avoid? What's one that you like or don't mind, at the very least? And what do you like? Do you like to grocery shop? And if you do, why? Why don't you answer those questions for me? And while you are doing that, we'll hop into headlines. Here we go.
True crime headlines.
Okie dokie. First headline tonight, guys, is in the Lindsay Clancy trial. Today was day 17. This is from ABC 7, written by Peter Charalamus and Mason Lieb. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just a quick recap. The hospital chaplain who met with Lindsay Clancy days after she killed her children and attempted to take her own life testified in the murder trial today. about her first conversation with a Massachusetts mother, recounting how Clancy said during one of their conversations that a voice had allegedly told her to kill the children and that she was so glad they were now safe. Sheila Kavanaugh, a board-certified chaplain at Brigham and Women's Hospital, testified that she met with Clancy at least 14 times while Clancy was hospitalized there, saying their first conversation took place on January 31st after Clancy had been extubated, tube removed. She had been hospitalized after attempting to take her own life after the killings. Quote, her emotional state was very neutral, a flat affect, but I remember vividly the first thing she said to me, Kavanaugh testified, saying Clancy was still covered with tubes and a neck brace at the time. Quote, we had been praying together, and so when I went in on Tuesday the 31st, she said to me as I held her hand to comfort her, I am so glad my children are safe. Kavanaugh testified that she replied theologically to Clancy, saying, Lindsay, your children are safe. They're safe in heaven with God. And I held her hand throughout the conversation, and we prayed for them, Kavanaugh added. She testified that Clancy mentioned hearing a male voice multiple times during their meetings immediately following the killings. Quote, the voice, according to Lindsay, told her that if she did not follow the command, neither she nor her children would be safe. Kavanaugh told the jurors she alluded to the fact that it was a male voice and it was persistent. During a brief cross-examination, Kavanaugh was asked why her notes did not mention Clancy hearing a voice in her head prior to the killings. Kavanaugh testified that as a chaplain, she was not there to evaluate the patient, but to bear witness to their suffering. Kavanaugh added that she continued to meet with Clancy and has visited her approximately 200 times during Clancy's stay at Tewksbury Hospital, where she has been held in state custody for the past 3 years. So, and then the defense could rest as soon as tomorrow, according to ABC 7. So that's what's going on over there. In the Sandra Birchmore trial, this came out a couple days ago, but lawyers for accused killer ex-cop insist Sandra Birchmore died by her own hand. That is their defense. An unusual court battle is expected to play out in the trial of a disgraced former Massachusetts police detective charged with the killing of a young woman he had met and groomed, prosecutors say, when she was a member of the Police Explorers Mentoring Program. Federal prosecutors insist former Stoughton Police Detective Matthew Farwell, who was also a cop union official, drove to the home of Sandra Birchmore, a woman with whom, they forgot putting the with there, he had allegedly, otherwise you say a woman who, okay? A woman who, a woman with whom, all right? I'm helping you here. Okay. With whom he had allegedly been, or no, it should say a woman who he had allegedly been sexually manipulating since she was 15 on February 1st, 2021, where he strangled her to death and staged her death to look like she had done it to herself. Whom and who are very, guys, if there's a preposition before the word who, it becomes the word whom. Otherwise, it's who. Okay? It's simple. Everybody wants to sound fancy. Doesn't matter. State investigators, blah, 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 blah. Hold on. Farwell's defense attorneys are using the state's case, which was investigated by some of the same officers in the Reed investigation, to prove that the cop is innocent and that Birchmore took her own life. The trial is slated to begin in October. Turning to Alex Murdaugh. State claims Murdaugh attorney lied about polygraph results. This came out yesterday, Dateline Columbia, South Carolina. This from WIS-TV, Michael Owens. State prosecutors claim Alex Murdaugh's defense lied about whether he passed a previous polygraph test. The claim came via new filing Wednesday, days after Murdaugh last appeared for a pretrial hearing. In its filing, prosecutors claim Murdaugh attorney Dick Harpootlian was not honest when he said his client passed a polygraph with flying colors. That comment came as both sides argue over whether the results of such a test should be admissible during Murdaugh's retrial. Quote, I am saying that it's an issue, not now, but much closer to trial, that we need to be able to litigate, and there may be others, Harpootlian said during the August 14th hearing. Continuing the quote, I will tell you, Mr. Murdoch passed a polygraph. Flying colors, same polygrapher. It may play a role in this trial. I'm not willing to concede that no, under any circumstances can a polygraph be used. I'm just giving you this example of Eddie Smith failing the polygraph and then the state relying on it to cancel his deal. Prosecutors said after Harpootlian made the statement, other members of Murdoch's defense team can be observed to look at each other in a way that can only be called incredulous and then start to whisper at one another. The state said in its own filing that Murdoch never took a polygraph test when he was tried in 2023 for the deaths of his wife, Maggie, and Paul. His son, Paul. He did, however, take a test after the trial with the FBI in October 2023 as he was under federal investigation for financial crimes. The state said that Murdoch failed that test, with results noting that he was, quote, trying to use possible countermeasures against the test, close quote. So maybe a slip of the tongue by Mr. Murdoch's, lawyer. All right. Let's check in on your comments before we get into good news and finish this up. Let's see. Coming down, looks like Penguin. I'm not sure which one. Did you avoid this or do you enjoy it? Washing windows and baseboards. Sharon says she doesn't mind ironing at all. Wingate Kid says, Gavin, this is awesome. I knew when I first found you, you were going to be amazing. Thanks. Well, I appreciate that. That helps me feel good about myself. Becky says, question 1, avoid the sweeping and mopping. Question 2, enjoy the cooking. And question 3, enjoys the grocery shopping. G Smile Sarah says, I'd rather scrub the bathtub or toilet than go to the food store. That's funny. It's funny how we all are. Sarah says, vacuuming. It's so rewarding because my son had 3 dogs and I have 1. I vacuum daily, so it feels good to get that all cleaned up. Clarinet Girl says, I do not like cleaning windows, enjoy scrubbing my bathtub, and I love to grocery shop. I always have a grocery list that I make every effort to stick with. Well, good for you. You're way better at it than I am. Great comments. All right, guys, with that, let's get into some good news. Wanda, what do you have for us for transition music?
Leave your worries far behind. Take a mental trip. Clear the mind. Catch a smile. Enjoy the view. Here's some good news just for you.
All right, guys. I read this from Chiron 4. This is the San Francisco Bay Area. Written by Dan Kerman. Woman donates $1 million to local teachers. What now? What now? A big mystery turned into a great surprise for teachers in the Ross Valley School District on Thursday. Longtime Marin County resident Maja Kristen donated $1 million, meaning each of the district's 100 teachers was handed a check for a little over $9,100. Kristen made the donation after finding out last year funding for this district was in the bottom 4% statewide, and teachers were the lowest paid in Marin County. Quote, we as citizens, we can write direct checks, Kristen told assembled teachers, who were then instructed to open the envelopes they had been handed by their principals. The teachers were elated. Quote, it's life-changing. I mean, I couldn't be more grateful, said teacher Sydney Dean. This feels great to have people right here in the community wanting to support public education and public educators, said teacher Eric Brandt. I don't think I've ever experienced such a beautiful gift from someone I don't even know or haven't taught their kid, said teacher Amber Bunnell Wild. And for some, this money will make a huge difference for their families. Quote, I have 3 kids and there's lots of activities that they want to do that we can't always afford to pay for because of my salary, said teacher Anna Schnell. Continuing the quote, and it's with this kind of money that there are things I can say yes to that they want to do, so it's really exciting and huge for our family, she added. District officials say while the area is affluent, the district still receives little funding. The property values are really high in our district, but the assessed value is really low because people move here and they stay here, and so Prop 13 has kept our tax base quite low compared to other Marin districts, said Tyler Graff, Ross Valley School Superintendent. Yeah, Prop 13 basically grandfathers you into your tax base. Your taxes do not go up. If you bought that house in 1976, you are paying the same property taxes you would in 1976. Property owners love it. Property owners love it, including, I enjoyed it. Teachers lined up to thank Kristen for her $1 million personal donation. She hopes other longtime Marin County residents will do the same. Quote, my hope was then folks like you would be here, the word would get out, and Marin residents who value public education would step forward one way or another, whether it's a direct gift or a political act or foundation poll or something, Kristen said. Kristen, thank you very much for taking care of teachers there in Marin County. And it is an affluent area, but man, if they're in the lowest 4% being paid statewide, then yeah, they need your help. So thank you for doing that. And what a great example for somebody who has the means to decide, I'm going to do this. That's just terrifically good news. I love people. I especially love people who come like you, stay all the way to the end and watch my show here on YouTube live or in the Rewatch Crew or over on Spotify Premium Video, or listen throughout the fruited plain, nay, the world, on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you guys. And thank you so much for the super chats tonight. We made our goal. That really, really helps. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You guys are amazing. Remember, I will not be back tomorrow because we're moving our daughter into college. It's that time of year, folks. School is starting, and we're moving our daughter into college, so we won't be here tomorrow. But on Monday, I will carry the press conference in Clarion County live, and then we will talk about it again in the afternoon. I hope you will join me there. If you ever need to reach me, there are links in the description down below. Go to my website, gavinfish.com. Follow me on Facebook. Join the fish tank. You're always invited. With that, I bid you adieu. Thanks so much for being here. Catch you on the next one.